Hey everyone, it's Adult Services Librarian Eric, and today I'm going to have a really brief and simple tutorial on how you can make your stenciled coasters if you were lucky enough to get one of our stenciled coaster kits. So your kit should come with 4 wooden squares that look very much like this one, 4 stencils with your initial that you specified when you signed up on it, some foam brushes, and white paint. A little tube of white paint. It doesn't look like much, but this is way more than you should need. What you'll also probably want is either a paper plate or paper towels, or I usually use both when I do something like this. And something to protect whatever you're working on. I find that trash can liners work just as well, and they're so much cheaper, and you probably have them laying around your house rather than those big rolls of plastic sheeting you can get. You could probably also use newspapers or any number of things. I guess the bottom line is you just want to put something on your table so you're not ruining your very nice table. Okay, the first step in this project is really to kind of look at the coaster that you got, these pieces of wood, and decide which side you want to be the face of your coaster. They do look a little different. Sometimes some of the grain patterns can be more pleasing. You might have a personal preference for what you like. So just decide which side you want to be the coaster, and then put that face down. And the next step in any stenciling project is to apply your stencil and decide where it goes. These stencils should be almost exactly the same size as your coaster, so you shouldn't have to measure or do anything at all other than place the stencil down. And you can see that that is almost exactly the same size as my coaster. And that's really all the prep work you should have to do. Get your paint, take the cap off, and it's probably because I am insanely paranoid that these are going to spill and get paint everywhere. That'll probably be taped on for you guys. And all you have to do is dip your foam brush into the paint, and this next step is one of the most important. You're going to get almost all of the paint that you just put on your brush and get it off. It should look almost like a dry brush, because what you're going to do is take this paint. If you have a lot of paint on there, it's going to get under your stencil and your lines are going to be really messy and really unclear. So that just gets enough paint off, and it probably takes longer to paint than you think it should. But you just take it, use your fingers to hold down the stencil. Try not to get paint on your fingers, because if you get any paint on your fingers, it's going to go everywhere. Trust me, I'm wearing dirty clothes, and you should wear clothes that you don't mind ruining. Look at all the stains I think I have on this one, because this is generally the clothing I wear whenever I do anything with paint or like a dye or anything that'll get me super messy. You're going to want to have your designated crafting clothes, because even though this paint is like super dry, look, I'm almost putting my wrist in this right now. So just hold down the part of the stencil that you're about to apply the paint to and make sure it's tight. And you don't need to like slam this brush down, but you want to go up and down as close to vertically up and down as possible with like not a lot of left and right. You're not actually painting this on, even though it's paint. You're really just kind of dabbing the paint onto the stencil. And since this is a paper stencil and we're not really taping it down at all or anything, because it is the same size, you're just going to want to go very lightly and very slowly. And that's the other thing. If you have a lot of paint on your brush, it's going to be more prone to sticking to the stencil. And that could pull your stencil out of position. I can't stress enough how important it is to keep this stencil tightly down with your fingers. And when it gets a little too dry for your liking, just go and get a little more paint and kind of brush it off. You can use a paper plate, you can use paper towels, or probably not a regular towel because you get lots of fibers on it, but just something to make sure that you're removing that paint. And I never take my left hand, or if you're a left-handed person, I never take my right hand off the stencil. Whatever hand you use to hold the stencil, never take it off, because you don't want this shifting and sliding around. And that's all. So, very carefully, I would make sure that there's no paint. As soon as you fill up the entire design of your stencil, I would make sure that there's no paint on my hands. And this stuff does dry quickly. So if you have to, you can wash it off, or just take a paper towel and wipe it off. And then immediately take corner of your stencil, making sure you don't have any paint on your hands, and just remove it. And your stencil should look something like this with your letter on it. Now, you'll notice I chose the B on purpose because it's got these little lines in here. I think there's only one or two of you who have a letter that has those lines, so what you can do is take a regular paintbrush. You can get these just about anywhere at the dollar store, basically anywhere. Take a little bit of paint and just, I'm going to take it from the cup because you can see how much is left here. Just very carefully, kind of freehand, paint in those lines. I have basically no artistic skill, and even I'm able to do this. So I'm pretty sure anyone else should be fine too. You can also use a little brush if you had a lot of paint on your foam brush and you were doing this and you see that there are like some ridges or high spots. You can also kind of take your brush and maybe fill in any areas that you missed, or fill in if you have like those high kind of ridges. Sometimes it leaves ridges because you are stamping the brush up and down and it's basically just splooshing paint on there. You can use the brush to clean those areas up and maybe get rid of some high spots and ridges. So what I'm going to do now, you can see I filled that in very nicely, and you've got your nice B coaster. That would be one. You would just repeat that process 4 times, and that's really it. I think in real time, I'm looking at the timer on this camera, that took me less than 6 minutes. Okay, what I'm going to do is what happens if your stencil moved or something, some other little mess up, you got paint outside your stencil. So I'm going to take this brush and, oh no, see, look, I got that little B, that little squiggly line on the B. Well, I will show you how to get rid of that. The first step is to wait for the paint to dry. This paint is acrylic, so it dries pretty quickly, but I would still recommend waiting like maybe an hour or two just to be safe. And then what you'll need is some kind of tool with a sharp end to scrape it off, and you're going to scrape very lightly. So these are what I've used in the past. Like I have this little box cuttery kind of tool that's got like a very sharp corner. You just take the corner and kind of scrape it off a little bit. I've used a pair of tweezers, like the tip of the tweezers, or this is my personal favorite. This came with my Cricut accessory pack. This little, it looks almost like a dental hook. And that's really good for scraping those little unwanted paint blotches off. So what you want to do is take the point of whatever sharp object you found and very lightly and very carefully just scrape the dried paint off. It'll come off, but you really want to go as light as possible because these are stained coasters. This isn't the natural color of the wood, so if you scrape off the stain, you're going to end up with a piece of wood that looks even worse than probably just having a little bit of extra paint. Well, that's all for today. This is my actual end that inspired the project, my set of 4 or 8 of these coasters that I made. I hope you enjoy these coasters and you have people over and they ask you all the time, oh my gosh, where did you get that coaster? And you can say, I got it from Cromaine. Have a great day, everyone.